Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. Today is going to be a follow-on video from my previous video where we made a top-down camera system for like a Dead Nation styled camera project. Basically in this one what we're going to do is I'm just going to add on to that by adding the line trace to the weapon. Reason for this is because the projectile system doesn't always fit every sort of game's needs. And a game style like that would benefit quite a lot from a line trace. And just adding on to the project after the video, I quickly realised that once you start adding in enemies and stuff like that, it can be really difficult with the projectiles, and a line trace system just simplifies things if that's the style of your game. So without any further ado, let me just give you a quick preview of what you're expecting to see. So a few other side notes, I have added some extra bits and pieces. I've done some post-processing, so you will notice that the edges of the screen are slightly darker. I've added just a post-process vignette. Also, I have changed the field of view from 90 to 100, and that just gives me a little bit more visibility of the area around me, and I think it gives it a nice little look. And then the line trace itself. At the moment, what I've done is I've left one of the debugging settings to actually draw where the line trace is visible on the screen. You can see that with the red line, and then when I hit an object, you can actually see for a brief second that it shows you where you've hit the object, and then the green behind it is where the rest of the trace would be. So I have added some impulse settings to actually make the blocks move. I've narrowed it down now to the point where it's very similar to what the projectile was. There are a few bugs here and there where you can rapidly shoot a corner and it'll start to spin on its axis, but other than that, everything works absolutely fine. And you know that whole physics rigid body probably won't come into play once you add characters to the game, because yeah, you probably won't have physics characters. But yeah, let's get straight into the setup, and I'll see you there in a minute. Okay, just as the project loads up, I am trying to move away from doing an entire one single video recording, which almost all of my videos have been. There's a lot more stress on getting everything right in one video, or in one long format. There is a lot of repetition, and I don't think it's sort of feasible going forward. This is the first attempt at breaking this video up. I'm also going to try and do a bit of a timeline with YouTube, see how that goes, and just some overall improvements. So let me know how that goes. And now the project's loaded, let's get straight into it. So what you want to go and do now is open up your content folder, go to your first person BP, go to blueprint, and open up your first person character. Okay, great stuff. So once that's loaded, I'm just going to pin this to the top. What we can see here, we've got the spawn projectile to a blueprint, which you know, plays the animation, spawns a projectile, and then creates a sound. Now essentially we don't want to do the animation because that only works with the first person arms, so that's not happening anyway. We don't want to spawn a projectile because we're going for a line trace instead, and we're going to disconnect the touch. However, I do want to be able to take that action fired, so when we press the left mouse button, we do want to do something. We want to create a line trace. So if you type in line trace, you get a few different options. Now there's for objects, by profile, and by channel. I personally go for channel because it's the one that I've used the most, and it's the one I'm the most familiar with, and that's the one you should pick too. So line trace by channel, this works on collisions. So there's a visibility collision and camera collision. We're just going to be on visibility, and essentially if you click on your capsule component and scroll all the way down to collisions, you can see here under the collisions there's a trace response where visibility is set to ignore, but the camera is blocked. Now that's for a pawn. Now if you go through and change all these settings yourself, you know, there'll be certain things in the world that are set up where it blocks visibility, so you can actually shoot your objects. So for example, these cubes themselves will be set up where they block visibility, so therefore my line trace hits them and gives me feedback that it's hit something. So that's why I like to use this, because it's quite easy to set up in the collisions. A line trace requires a start position and an end position. You've also got a few other features here. Trace complex. Now, if you do run into any issues where your traces seem to be going through things that they shouldn't, I've never needed to use this, but you can give that a tick. If you are working on more complex systems where you've got a lot of traces going at once, then that might be something that comes into play, but I've personally never needed to use it just yet. Access to ignore, so that can be a list of characters that you just don't ever want to be able to be picked up. That might be things like NPCs, or also if you're going into multiplayer, if you've got like a team-based game and you don't want friendly fire, you could set them characters to be ignored, so then you can't shoot your teammates, or the bullets just pass straight through them anyway. You've got draw debug type. Now, as I showed you in the preview, it actually drew a line on the screen to show you where the trace is. That is this. We're going to set that up for duration. And just in this drop down below here, you can see right at the bottom you've got draw time. Now, that is the duration of the draw debug. I'm going to change that to 2.5 because 2.5 seconds is I think enough time for you to see where the line trace has been, but it's not so long that they start stacking up on the screen, and it can get annoying. Because there is another option, persistent, where they just stay on the screen forever. Of course, that's not going to do anything because we've not set it up just yet, but I'll show you later on. That gets really annoying. The whole screen's just red, and it's not nice, it's not pretty. So for the most part, apart from the draw time, you can keep that collapsed. You can change the color of your hit and like your trace line and your hit line, but for the most part, you know, the standard red and green is more than enough. You have got some outputs basically. If you've hit something, yes, and then you've got an out hit which can be split into let's see if split this. You can find out where the end of your trace hit, what item it hit, what's the actor it hit, was it a physics material, what's the actual impact point, what's the normal of it, so what angle did it hit at, what time it took. You know, you can really get a lot of data out of the line trace. But for us, all we need to do is just apply a simple impulse, which I'll drag that over in just a minute. So for the line trace start position, what we're going to want to do is we want to start it from where the gun is, because you want the line trace to start from the gun and then kind of like go out into the distance from there. For whatever range that you might set your weapon, you can set it short, you can set it really long if it's going to be something like a sniper. So we can steal a little bit of the blueprint from the spawn projectile that was already here. Now, because they already get sort of like the world location of the sphere. Now the sphere is that little ball in the end of your gun, which they've kind of put there as a placeholder for the barrel. And then what they've done is they've added this to an offset. Now they've offset it because obviously if they spawn a projectile inside the barrel, there is a chance that it might collide with the barrel and register as a hit on the actual gun itself. So they've added an offset so that of about 20. So instead of it being like right here in the barrel, the offset actually starts from maybe here, which I think is a good idea. So because they've already made the code for that, we can simply just pinch this this vector and just pop it straight onto the start position. Now whether you use a projectile or a line trace, they're going to start from the same position. Brilliant. Okay, so for the end position, I had to fudge this a little bit at first, because for FPS games, normally the way that you'd set up a line trace would that you'd get the position from the camera, which is essentially the eyes, and get a forward location from that, which would then normally be where your crosshair situates. So you'd go from the eyes forward. So your line trace wouldn't necessarily come from the weapon itself. Now, because of the style of the way the camera is positioned top down, it's a little bit different. So to get the end position, what we're actually going to do is, if you want to drag in your gun once more, and then we're going to want to get the world location of this, so then we know where the gun is situated in the world. Now we need some way of sort of getting a set distance in front of the gun, but the problem is with this, at the moment the character's sort of like positioned forward, but the gun is almost it's slowly going off into the distance. So it's almost like, well, it's because it is, the gun is in fact actually rotated. It's not square zero, and as your character runs around, the gun's bobbing around because of the animation, and it just wouldn't be great. So we need something static that doesn't really move. So what I found works best is if we actually get the capsule component, which is what surrounds your character, and we actually get the forward location of this instead. So let's drag off that, and we're going to put forward vector, and for some reason it's put in another capsule component there, but we don't need that. And then once we've got those, there's one other thing that we're going to need to do. We're going to need to create a new variable. We're going to put weapon range, and we're going to change this to the type of float, and then hit compile, and then we're just going to set in some figure here. Well, not minus. Let's say 2,500 just to start with, which will be, this will be really short, but it'll give us a good grasp of what we're doing. So from the weapon range, we want to drag that in, and we want to kind of like add all these together. So what we want to do is we want to add the forward vector with the range added to it to the world location to get an endpoint. So essentially what we want to do is we want to multiply, or we want to times. So we're going to want to times a vector by a float, and the float is going to be our weapon range. Once we've got our weapon range and the forward vector, because essentially this is just going to be which way is pointing forwards and how far in front do we want to go. We want to add that to the location of the gun, and then essentially we should have our line trace. So now we want to add vector to vector, and we want to add this distance to this distance, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, if I've not got this the wrong way around, that should give us a line trace. Just before I try this, let me make sure I've not made any mistakes. When you press that, start the line trace, we've got a start position and an end position. It is set for duration, and we've got a time. So essentially, if I press play now, I should get something on the screen. Sweet. So now we've got a line trace, which is 2,500 long, which I said it might be quite short, but in fact it's actually really quite long. And you can actually see now that it's hitting the cubes, it's hitting the wall, and you can see that square that's popping up to say that it's registering a hit. Really good. So essentially that is the line trace. It's essentially complete. However, just clicking and making lines doesn't really give you much feedback that you've actually done something. So let's make a cube fly away into the distance. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to pinch some of the blueprint for the projectile. So again, if you want to go to content, first person BP, blueprints, you'll have the first person projectile just there. And if you can see here, what they've got is we've got an event hit, which is essentially the same as what a trace does. When I hit something, do something else, and in this case it's going to be add an impulse at the location and destroy the actor. Now we're not going to destroy anything because, oh, excuse me, that's essentially the actual projectile itself that it's destroying, and we don't want to do that. So let's just pinch all of this to start with. Let's copy that, and we're going to head back over to the first person character. Let's chuck that straight in here. Now we could do something similar here with the branch and just go, alright, if whatever we hit is simulating physics is true. Let's do this. We are, but we need to do a break first. So I'm going to grab all that, move over, and then essentially where we've got this and we can split it into all these different things, we want to drag off out component and plug that into there. So it can check to see if this component that we've hit is simulating physics. Now, just before I do that, I want to show you one other thing. Instead of having this massive list of nodes like that, because now you can't recombine all of that, and you're just going to have this massive list all the time on your screen. There's one other node that you can do, so let's just recombine those. You can do what's called a break. Now a break is exactly the same thing. It's just giving you the same list but in a little node that you can collapse. And the great thing about this is when you pull off the hit component and collapse it, it now collapses but only gives you the nodes that you've selected, which is really nice. So now we can check to see if we're actually if the component we've hit is simulating physics. One thing I like to do is get an is valid. Now the reason I like to do this is because if you hit something and it's not classed as a component, or it's it's classed as something else, it can cause some errors. So only if it's valid, then check if it's simulating physics. Because if you shoot something that's not a component, it'll do this check and it might throw it out like it can't be simulating physics, and it just makes the process a little bit easier. Once you've done that, let's add an impulse. Now essentially this get velocity, this would have taken the projectile flying through the air, and then it works out the velocity of that projectile. Because we fired it out of the gun, it's got a velocity. Now a trace doesn't. A trace isn't necessarily a moving object, so we kind of need to fake this a little bit. So instead, I'm just going to delete the get velocity, and I'm just going to type in a few figures myself. Now, what I have come up with as the closest figures to what the projectile was is this. So minus 250 on the X, 250 on the Y, and 250 on the Z, and that gives it the best look and feel of the projectile from before it. You can tweak these, of course. You can have it stupidly high, or you can have it really low, where it just basically tickles it, if you like. And like I said earlier, we don't need to destroy. Ooh, good coffee. Okay, so now that's all set up, we should have a line trace which goes through, checks if what we've hit is valid. If it is valid and is simulating physics, let's add an impulse to it so we can get some movement on it. Let's just give that. Oh, of course, it needs to know what to hit. So now we've got all the proper checks sorted, where it's actually hitting a target now. Let's give it a quick test. And there we are. We can see that when we shoot these blocks now, they're doing a little jump and a bounce back. And again, this isn't perfect. You can, because the way the projectile works is a little bit different, because it's actually a collision. This is sort of like a superimposed collision. You can get some glitchiness where you can sort of like really go to town on these cubes and get them to spin out of control. I'll leave you to tweak the figures that make the physics. This one, the impulse, and you can perfect it to how you like. Now, one other thing that we seem to be missing is sound. So another thing that we can just move up here and pinch off the to spawn projectile blueprint. You know, even if it's not valid, we still want to make a sound. And if it is valid, let's also make a sound. And then we can bring that back down here. So this looks really messy. you could just copy that. But essentially, now we've got gunfire. Oh, and we've got a lot of issues. What is this? So it's trying to read hit component. Oh, I know what I've done. My bad. So essentially, if it was valid or not, it was going back into this, is it simulating physics? So I kind of bypassed the is valid by letting the not valid go back into... Yeah, my bad. So now if we press play, let me just double check that I got that the right way around. Right, we have no errors. So essentially, off the not valid goes to the play sound, off the false of the branch goes to the play sound, and then if it's true, it wants to play a sound also. All of that can be completely bypassed by just copying this, which I should have done in the first place. Do you know sometimes when you think, yeah, I'll just be lazy, and it actually ends up being a lot worse? So Control W, copy those. Let's just, as soon as we've done the line trace, play a sound straight into the is valid, and then we don't even need to bother with all of these wires all over the place. And then we can grab all this junk, move it over, and then drag that down here and drag that over there. Slightly better. And then now we're getting a sound regardless of what's going on in the game. Okay, so that just leaves now the extra bits and pieces that I added earlier on. So I made some changes to the first person character to get the sort of darker, edgy look. It's not quite edgy, but it's a darker look. And for that, I added a post-process effect. So at the moment, you can see it's quite bright around the edges. And with your camera selected, on the right-hand side, if you go down, you've got things like color grading, film, lens. And under the lens and under image effects, there's a vignette. If you tick this, this will give you a subtle darkening around the edge, but it's not that noticeable. I set mine to about 0.7, which if I press play now, you'll see that the edges are noticeably darker. Now, once you've got a bit more scenery in your game, you know, this will really make you feel a little bit more claustrophobic, because everything at the outer edges of the screen will be less visible. So you'll feel like all the action's in the middle of the screen, which is exactly what you want. It gets your attention in the right place. Now, the other thing that I did as well was I changed the field of view. So currently when I press play, you can see we're only just seeing the cubes on the outer edge there. Now, just setting the field of view to 100 has now given me a lot more visibility around the edges, but it's also squeezed the image a little bit. The field of view is a bit like a cone, you know, and the wider you make it, it kind of stretches and squeezes. The default's set to 90 because that's meant to be comparable to human vision, but a lot of games, you know, work within a big range of that. So I'll let you play with that, and you can even make a setting for your character to be able to control that. Obviously, just be aware that it does change things. So I think I've covered everything there. If I haven't, or if something's not working like it should do, please leave a comment down below and I'll definitely help you out. If you did like it and it's been helpful for you, please consider giving me a like. I've made this video slightly different than how I normally do. Normally I do about 1,000 takes and try to get it right all in one video. That's very stressful, so this time I've kind of chilled out a little bit, and I've just stopped the recording when I've made a mistake and then started it again after the mistake. Hopefully that doesn't ruin the format of the video. You know, again, comment or give me a like if it's passable. That'd be appreciated. And if it was helpful, consider subscribing, because I'm going to be making plenty more videos. and it'd be great to see you in the next one. So until then, thank you very much, and goodbye.